Hello my friends! I've been meaning to do this video for a really long time, and it's been a while since I last did a lore video, but this topic has actually been driving me bonkers because I think it's the most misunderstood Battletech topic that there is. Just the amount of people that are wrong on this one is incredible. But perhaps that's just because it's not something that's readily explained. And the funny part is the through armor crit house rules in Battletech come about from a misunderstanding, from this misunderstanding about how armor works in real life and how armor works in Battletech. So let's just go through some of the details here. So here I have the four general case types of armor or types of defense that exist in real life. So you have solid armor, which is as old as dirt, and or otherwise known as material armor or just armor. It's anything that's just an object placed between you and the kinetic projectile or penetrator or whatever it is that's being fired in your general direction. And how solid armor works is pretty well understood by everybody. But the basics are that solid armor is weakness when you is weakness. Yes, is weakness. No. It's weakest when you try and penetrate it through its thinnest side. So if I go from here through here, like that, forgive my terrible drawing, that is the weakest possible. That is the easiest way to penetrate solid armor. That is the weakest side of the armor, is the thinnest bit. And if you slant it a bit, then obviously you're going through more armor here. So therefore this penetrator would lose more force than this one that's gone straight through the side like this. This kind of armor is not suitable for humans, but it's all we had. That's because, humans are tall, and so you're wearing a layer, and the layer is exactly like this. This is, this is like layers of clothing. Anything that's trying to get at you is getting through what would potentially be the thinnest bit of any point of your clothes. So solid armor is not great for humans, but it's all we had. It's as old as dirt. It's the first kind of armor technology. And when you get to a level where the armor is very slanted, especially solid, like solid metal armor or titanium plates or something, you have the potential for a projectile that's going fast enough to actually bounce off the armor, doing effectively no damage or very little damage, maybe making a small indentation or something along those lines. So solid armor is like, it's all or nothing. You either get through armor crits, as it were, like this and like this, or the armor is either thick enough or angled enough that the penetrator bounces off. Pretty simple. Everyone understands solid armor. Not too much to say about it. This is the kind of armor that people think that mechs have, and they don't. They do not have solid armor. It is not a thing in Battletech. It wouldn't make sense because solid armor is not effective really at protecting a tall object. It's good for protecting a long object like a tank. When the tank is long, you can have like slanted plates like this. Great, perfect. Solid armor is great for tanks because they're low to the ground and they're long. But when you are tall, you can't do that. So then you have armor that really is much weaker than it could be otherwise. Now, the next armor type we have is Reactive Armor. This armor is modern and does not exist in Battletech because Battletech is old. So it's here for completeness, really. But Reactive Armor is the idea that you have some sort of explosive or pad or potentially like nail bomb type type bag in front of your solid armor, so that when the penetrator comes along and hits it, there's an explosion, there's a reactive force. This bag of nails or of plastic explosive or whatever will even like chemical acid or something will explode towards the incoming projectile, and that counter explosion will greatly reduce the force of the incoming projectile and possibly hamper its angle in some way, or even destroy it outright. This is pretty modern stuff, and you can see it on tanks these days. There's lots of blocks strapped to the solid armor. The penetrator will enter the reactive block. There'll be some plastic explosives in there. Those explosives will blow up, and those explosives will be angled like cutting explosives. Explosives used to like tear down bridges. They're forcing the blast in a particular direction, which is obviously towards the projectile and away from the tank, to destroy the incoming penetrator. It's not in Battletech. It should be, because if the creators of Battletech had kept up with modern times, they should have introduced something like this, because this is very modern. Battletech is meant to be set in the future, but it does not exist in Battletech, but it's out there. It's modern, it works, it's relatively light compared to other armor, and it offers a very high degree of defense. It has the same problem as Ablative Armor, which is that once it's been used, then that's it, it's done. So it's good in a world where being hit once is probably enough to just totally destroy you. Okay, active defense does exist in Battletech. It's pretty primitive though. We're talking to things like close-in weapon systems. So they've got AMS, anti-missile system, which is a type of close-in weapon system where you have guns with radar and other tracking that are tracking incoming projectiles that try and shoot them down. And things like active armor, which is a very modern concept of like armor that's like a porcupine that's got projectiles built into it, that you have various infrared sensors, radars, and computers that calculate the incoming shot, and then the armor itself is literally trying to shoot down the incoming projectile. You have even more modern stuff like microwave and laser defenses that try and overheat incoming projectiles to make them explode before they hit. Those kind of defenses are not very effective against just metal penetrators like sabot. I think they call them lances or whatever. Like a sabot, a modern sabot is like a plastic case with a metal javelin in the middle of it, and basically you just fire that solid, probably like titanium or some hard metal javelin at the enemy, and it just cuts straight through them. There's no explosive or anything. It's just literally a bar. And the idea is to just cut a hole straight through the target, hopefully hit something important. AMS is in Battletech, but it's relatively primitive. It hasn't kept up with the times. And AMS sort of became lost tech and then came back again. It's never been that great in Battletech's rules. But this is not something that anybody gets wrong, usually. Most people understand how these systems work. So no, nothing to clear up there. But we are now moving into the main topic, Ablative Armor. And here I've drawn a swimming pool. Because of a quite a famous Mythbusters episode where they fired guns into a swimming pool, and it explains how this works. This is the kind of armor that is used in Battletech, is a kind of futuristic ablative armor. And because it's ablative armor, you cannot through armor crit it. You can't penetrate it in a traditional sense. But what do I mean by that? Well, let's try and clear up this misunderstanding with the Battletech lore, because it's driving me bonkers. So the amount of times I've tried to explain it. So I hope that this helps some people out there. Okay, so here's the swimming pool. So just to briefly recap what the Mythbusters guys did, they had a episode where they were put to the question, can you hide from bullets in a swimming pool? Or, you know, when people dive into rivers, are they able to evade weapons fire? So they got a load of guns, and they started with a 9mm gun, and they sort of effectively got this to happen. So they shot it, and it, you know, it went and it hit the water, and then it just sort of curved down like this. Okay, and it was, you know, that was what they expected, more or less. This weapon does not have a lot of power. So once it hit the water, it just started losing power and then curving down into an arc, and that was it. And the bullet then landed in the bottom of the swimming pool, and job done. That is what people expect. But this is where it gets interesting. So after the 9mm, they went for something a little bigger. If they went for 5.56 or 45 or something like that, they went for a hunting rifle slash assault weapon caliber. And what happened was, so obviously they fired it at the same angle, and then when it hit the water, it started to curve, and then it shattered into a million pieces, and the bits of the bullet just plummeted to the bottom of the pool, having lost all their energy. So compared to the 9mm round, which sort of gave us that curve that we looked at before, the higher power round actually at first looked like it was, you know, having a better, I've sort of misdrawn this here, but had a better angle, as it were. So the angle was probably more like this. So it had a better angle, like it was gonna, you know, it was gonna penetrate forward. And then it just plummeted down. The bullet shattered to bits and it plummeted down, and that was the end of it. That was game over for the bullet. Let me just delete that bit because that's wrong. Okay, so that's what they got. So then they went out and they got a really powerful, like, anti-material rifle. I don't know what round it was using. Whatever the biggest round they could get their hands on was. Probably like 308 or something along those lines. And they fired that into the swimming pool along the same path. And it got to about here. Let's draw this one in a different color to just sort of make it more obvious. Let's go with purple, because why not? It got to about here, and then it just vaporized, and, you know, little pieces of the bullet just drifted down to the bottom of the tank. It got even less distance than the 5.56 did. So what's going on here is, this is the ablative process, where the more energy that the projectile had, the more rapidly the projectile received heat from friction from the water. And the more rapidly that heat reached such a level that the very material that the penetrator was made from, just disintegrated, just vaporized. You were reaching a point where the penetrator had heated to such an extent that the actual bonds holding the material together had been energized enough to break away from each other, causing the bullet to turn to dust, effectively, or fragments. And this is the concept. This is the reason why Battletech armor works. And it's also why we have nice round figures for damage. It's not just a mechanical thing. It also makes sense realistically. So imagine, if you will, in Battletech you have Ablative Armor, and it reduces incoming damage by 5. Each plate reduces incoming damage by 5. So the way that this kind of armor works is if you hit it with enough force to break it, then it has its full effect. If you don't hit it with enough force to penetrate it, then it acts like solid armor and you don't penetrate it. So these -5 plates here that I've placed down at the bottom, let's just grab one and put it to the side so we can just play around with it. Okay, so here's my my -5 plate here. Now if I stab it with a pencil, right, a Battletech ablative plate, I'm not going to do any damage to it, of course. So I'm going to stab it with a pencil and I'm going to do nothing. So there's a rule for that in Battletech. It's a primitive weapons rule. Primitive weapons have their damage reduced by 1 under the tabletop rules, if I remember correctly. And so if a primitive weapon would do like 1 damage or less, so, you know, like a bow and arrow or a primitive gun or something like that, then it would do 0 damage. But the way this works is, so say I would do 3 damage. I don't do 3 damage to this plate, and I'm left with -2. That's not how it works. You hit it, and the energy is basically pushed through the whole block. So if you're thinking it like the water, when this bullet hits, it's frictioning through this material, which is very dense and very abrasive. And that process causes that energy to just go boof everywhere throughout the whole block. So if I hit this with -3, I don't do 3 damage, I do 5. Because this plate will be destroyed. So for example, if I had an autocannon penetration that did 12 damage, it wouldn't do 12 damage in this example, it would do 15. Because it will shatter these 3. They'll be totally shattered and destroyed. And it would leave these 2. So my 25 armor would become 10 on a 12 hit if the plates all did -5. Now I presume that in Battletech each plate does -1, and that's the round number, as it were. But it would this system, which is quite realistic, it would suggest round numbers of damage. Now this kind of armor, once it's gone, it's gone. That's it. So, you know, if I took a hit here that did 30 damage, all of these plates would shatter, and I'd be left with the kinetic force of 5, whatever that means in terms of real physics for Battletech. I'd be left with 5 damage that hits my structure, presuming that structure is solid in Battletech. This is not a through armor crit. This is, the armor is gone. Ablative armor is either there or it's not there. Once it's not there, it's gone. Which seems like a really obvious thing to say. But you don't shoot through ablative armor and then you have ablative armor left over. That's not what happens. It's just gone. It's just the plates shatter into dust and they're gone. And you're left with a hole where your ablative armor used to be. Now, obviously, a mech's leg, for example, is quite long. So I guess you would presume that there would be different sections of the leg, like different plates in different areas. But no one actually knows how futuristic ablative armor works in Battletech. For all we know, they could be, you know, this box here could be a mech's leg, and the ablative armor could be lots and lots of thin slices that cover the whole surface like this. Like these just a proposition, okay? Don't know this for sure, but no one does. You know, this slice here could be only like a few millimeters thick that covers the whole leg. And there's many layers of them. So whether you hit the leg, you know, near the top or near the bottom or in the middle somewhere, what you're doing is you're hitting like 10 or 15 of these layers, and these layers are then shattering away into dust. And then when you go to the mech lab and replace them, all your engineer is doing is just getting more layers and pinning them back to the frame. This is the only kind of armor that would work on a mech. This is the only kind of armor that would be effective in a futuristic kind of setting, because other kinds of armor is very, very poor when you're trying to cover a tool object. But ablative armor is great because it likes toolness, because the bigger you make the plate, the more of it there is to diffuse kinetic force when you smash a projectile into it. It's more resistant to damage, if you will, or it will absorb more energy, is a better way of putting it. The bigger the plate is, the bigger you can make the plate, and not necessarily thicker too, but you'd probably want many layers of them, because obviously you don't want one big plate and then someone fires a single shot at it and the whole thing shatters and then you're exposed, and the next shot is gonna be money no matter where it lands, because your entire plate of armor has gone up in smoke. So you want the plates to be as big as you can get, but you also don't want you want to have as many of them as possible. And the best way to do that, if you had futuristic technology and you could get away with it, would be to make lots of long, thin ablative plates and then layer them on top of each other. So that when a penetrator hits that first thin plate, that thin plate shatters, and it's made out of such an abrasive futuristic material that it's like sucking the energy out of the penetrator, and the penetrator has lost all its energy and it can't penetrate the next plate, and that's how you'd get the best defense. Anyway, I don't want to drone on too much. This is how armor in Battletech works, and this is why through armor crits are nonsense in a Battletech setting, because through armor crits are a product of solid armor, not of ablative armor. Ablative armor is either there or it's gone, and then when it's gone, it's gone. That's it. You're totally exposed. When it's there, it can pretty much stop anything, like the swimming pool. If I had a mech stood behind this swimming pool, you could unleash Hell's Fury into the swimming pool, and most of it would just be vaporized by the ablative effect of the water, which is the reason why submarines use torpedoes and basically nothing else. Because once you get over a certain speed in water, your projectile will just disintegrate. So the only ranged weapon you can get is something that's slow enough to avoid being frictioned to bits, like a torpedo. Or maybe something like a missile, if you fire the missile out of the water and then come back in. But then you're avoiding the water there. So that's the reason why submarines use torpedoes, and submarine weapon technology has not really gone anywhere in like 30 years. Apart from, I suppose, to make better, more stealthy torpedoes with better engines that go further and so on and so forth. But no real paradigm shift in that kind of weaponry. And that is it for now. I just wanted to get this out there because this is truly a misunderstood subject. So I thought I'd just go over the physics of it a little bit. And this is one area in Battletech that's really quite realistic. Funnily enough, this is actually, there are a lot of things that don't make much sense in Battletech, but armor is actually pretty realistic. It's well understood processes that are used in Battletech, and if you understand ablative armor, which hopefully you all now do, It works exactly how you would expect it to work, and that's why you will see a lot of round numbers, like, you know, weapons climbing in power in increments of 5, because they have just enough power to penetrate the next plate, but not enough power to, you know, penetrate the plate after that. You have different weapons that reach the same plate at different levels of kinetic power, but they all have enough to break. You know, I have a weapon with 11 damage and I have a weapon with 14 damage. They both do 15 damage because they break 3 plates. So that leads to lots of round numbers. It's actually pretty reasonable. Actually, something that you could explain with real physics. So that is it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.